nonprofit educational institution to promote church-state separation and positive atheism. We have weekly meetings on Sundays at 11:30 at Crescent City Beignets, 1211 West 6th Street, west of Lamar, and these are sort of informal meetings. You're welcome to come if you are a non-theist. No membership is required. You're welcome to come join us. Except for the third Sunday of every month, we have a lecture series, which is at the Austin History Center at 9th and Guadalupe. The next event will be October 19th, and those start at 12:30 in the afternoon. The next lecture, October 19th, we'll have Elaine Rich, who is a CS professor from UT, and she'll be talking about artificial intelligence. Another ongoing event that we have the happy hours on Thursday nights at Antonio's Tex-Mex. It's starting at 7:30. Antonio's is on the southbound feeder off of on I-35 southbound from 183. In addition to our show here, we have some members who host the Nonprofits radio show, and this is a bi-weekly internet radio show, and it airs from alternate Saturdays from 2 to 3:30 p.m. You can catch information about that on our website. The next show will be September 25th. Finally, we have the Texas Atheist and Agnostic Conference that our group is hosting. This is a Texas-wide conference. This will be October 8th through 10th at the Holiday Inn and at Town Lake. And there's more information about that on our website as well. In addition, there's a sign-up form and registration form. We're going to have a number of speakers and such. Our main speakers are going to be Michael Newdow, who challenged the Pledge of Allegiance all the way to the Supreme Court, and kind of a local hero, Thomas Van Orden, who is in the middle of challenging the Ten Commandments monument at the Capitol. So that should be a good deal. Mm-hmm. Today, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Don Baker, and this is Linda Raymond.
Howdy.
Ashley Perrion, our normal host, is off today, so I've bumped up. I've swapped seats, and Linda, who is normally behind the camera, is going to help out today. Linda, did you have anything to say?
Not as yet. I have some material to go over, but I think the topic you came up with is going to be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, today I would like to talk about the topic of co-opting, and this is the idea that religion is potentially taking over various institutions and things, or trying to, and we wanted to kind of focus on that. What we'll do is we'll have a little presentation, and a little later on we'll open the phones to callers. We are a live call-in show. In about 20 minutes or so, we'll ask for people to call in, and then we'll take callers the rest of the show. So on this co-opting idea, I brought in some material on three different areas where religion, I think, is either has or is in the process of co-opting various institutions. And the first one is marriage, the institution of marriage, and this is something that's happened a long time ago, so it's kind of historical. Then I wanted to talk about the U.S. judiciary, or co-opting the government, and the co-opting of the U.S. judiciary is rather kind of interesting, and it's kind of an ongoing thing. And then the issue of science in general. Wouldn't it be nice if religion was supported by science, or wouldn't it be nice for the theist if religion supported science? So that's the third one. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. So let's take a look at marriage. Certainly, marriage is I almost hate to call it an institution. It certainly derives out of some of our instincts for both finding mates and our instincts for raising children. So when you sort of combine those, you sort of have this change of status within a community, and I think that a lot of pretty much all human cultures have some notion of this rite of passage where you do take a mate and you do raise children with that mate, and these rites of passage are certainly important in the lifetime of people, and important in the lifetime of a culture or a tribe or whatever, and certainly this notion of marriage or this notion of taking a mate has been around with us for a very, very long time. And I think the point of this is it's been around much longer than religion has been around. It's been around a lot longer than Christianity and so on, all of our current religions. And so, and in fact, Christianity has argued against marriage in its early days, which is kind of surprising. So the Apostle Paul discouraged marriage because it conflicted with a man's love of God. So if it's a conflict of interest issue. How can you love God more than, if you have this competing wife? Saint Augustine, who is also a pretty early important Christian leader, I guess you'd say, he said, I do not see what other help women would be to a man if the purpose of generating was eliminated. Okay. So what good are women if they don't make children? So
that's in keeping with the Bible.
That's in keeping with the Bible, and clearly a lot of cultures, especially the ones that led into the biblical times, treated marriage as in many cultures treat marriage as a property issue, right? You're exchanging property of this woman from her parents to the new husband. So and if anything has happened over time, we've seen that women their status has been elevated to that of man. We see more equality as time goes on. We see that women can start to have property of their own at certain times. We can see that that marriage is just a second. That marriage is changing into so we're having more and more relaxation of the restrictions. So it used to be taboo to marry outside of your religion. It used to be taboo to marry outside of your race, and so on. So if you look at the long history of marriage, we can see that the same-sex marriage is just another step in this equality idea. I had another little factoid here that the Catholic Church didn't consider marriage a holy sacrament until 1215. So that begs the question of what were they doing before that, and why wasn't it a holy sacrament before then? Did God change His mind or whatever? So that it just really makes no sense. So how is this co-opting? Well, how does religion benefit from marriage? Well, clearly, if you're popping out new believers who are new and people who can be indoctrinated, that certainly helps the religion. This whole idea of binding child rearing with religious teaching is very much a mechanism to help the culture translate through our institutions of child rearing and such. So,
but you also want to take a step back. The institution that controls the sex drive basically controls society, and that has got to be the number one reason to want to get your hands on religion, on the ability to create children, and telling people this is good and this is bad. Because if you control the sex drive, get them to direct that energy to your personal goal or your institutional goal, well, then that's power right there. It's as raw power as you can get. Yep.
That's a very good point. Okay, so I don't want to belabor that too much. So religion has certainly co-opted marriage. We can certainly have marriage without religion, and in many cases, in many societies, we do have that sort of thing. So I'd like to move on to the next subject now, which is this issue of the U.S. judiciary and the co-opting of the U.S. government that's going on. And this has been especially intense, I think, in the last few years when we see the religious right and the neocons kind of raising to power. I want to make a couple comments that our judiciary is very much part of the checks and balances of the U.S. government. We have the executive branch, the judiciary branch, and the Congress, the legislative branch, and they all kind of check each other so that no one has too much power. And there's this claim going on right now that. Another thing to point out here is judiciary decisions. Because the judiciary is not elected generally, they're generally appointed people who through the other offices. They are not quite as easily manipulated by public opinion and the mob psychology or the tyranny of the majority. So the judiciary is somewhat distant from that, and in fact they make their decisions based on case law, interpreting the Constitution, various facts and logical arguments, and they are very much to a large degree unswayed by emotional appeals and death threats and that sort of stuff. So the people are now making these claims, this lie that we have these justices running around, and there's this tyranny of the judicial tyranny is the sort of buzzword that's being said
and
these
judicial
days.
activism.
And judicial activism. Those that's right. And the idea is that, well, these judges are making decisions without adhering to what the voting public say, and it was designed that way. That was the whole purpose, is so that to sort of protect. And there are mechanisms. There are mechanisms to override the judiciary. For example, amending the Constitution is one of those mechanisms. So if you change the Constitution, that certainly changes how the judiciary is going to interpret the Constitution and so on. And so that's the basic mechanism for say the legislative branch to change that. So there are mechanisms to do that. So I would claim that this is a big lie. This judicial tyranny and this judicial activism is a big lie. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. They're not doing anything now that they weren't doing during all the civil unrest in the 60s, and it wasn't judicial activism then because the majority of the people agreed with them. Now that it's the case where the majority of the people have been swayed by this ultra-right-wing theists, we'll just leave it at that, then they're saying that, well, you're going against what we want, therefore you're suddenly in the wrong. And in fact, they're trying to put that into not just as constitutional amendments, but within bills that are in the Senate that aren't going to be in the Constitution, but they're still going to amend the U.S. Code, especially Section 1260, which says whether or not an area can be reviewed by the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. That's got to be one of the things you're going to bring up, the so-called Constitution Restoration Act. Oh,
yeah, absolutely. There's actually a couple of different bills or acts that are in various states of becoming law that are very, very disconcerting, and the idea that Linda brought up is that they're trying to sort of sabotage these checks and balances. They're putting into these laws that they're trying to use a relatively obscure clause of the Constitution to in effect prevent the Supreme Court from ruling on the particular law. And the Constitution Restoration Act is one of them. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or you familiar?
Well, I'll be happy to read how they want to adjust Section 1260, which says matters not reviewable. First of all, for those who aren't familiar with it, in Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution is a list of the cases that the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction over and appellate jurisdiction over. There's also a clause that what they have appellate jurisdiction over can be changed by any regulation passed by Congress. Now, neither of us are legal experts, although I have actually sent a message to one to ask whether or not this clause has been exercised in the past, and whether or not this clause has been applied to an entire class of laws or to a specific law here and one there. So actually, if anybody who's watching can fill this in, since my expert hasn't gotten back to us, that would be useful. But their specific attempt, which is in the Constitution Restoration Act, Senate Bill, 2323 from the 108th Congress, reads that notwithstanding any other provision of this chapter, the Supreme Court shall not have jurisdiction to review, by appeal, writ of certiorari or otherwise, any matter to the extent that relief is sought against an entity, a federal, state, or local government, or against an officer or agent of federal, state, or local government, whether not acting in official or personal capacity, by reason of that entity's, officers, or agents' acknowledgement of God as the sovereign source of law, liberty, or government.
Right, and this has some really creepy implications. First off, it flies directly in the face of this church-state separation, this First Amendment of the Constitution. Right.
So absolutely.
So that's one. It upsets this balance of powers in the checks and balances in the U.S. government. So in effect, you're really sort of meddling with the underlying machinery of the U.S. government, which should cause everybody some concern. And then it opens the door for potentially people saying, well, I'm going to give this particular person a death sentence if you're a judge. To give this person a death sentence because that's the biblical interpretation of it, and there is no recourse for anybody else to override that. That's one of the things that might occur out of this is some judge may say, well, the Bible says that adulterers need to be put to death or whatever, choose your poison. And then decide to give the death penalty to somebody, and then this because of the way this law is written, nobody can challenge it. Nobody can turn it into. Nobody can say this is wrong or this is against the U.S. code.
Well, I have to admit, I don't read it quite that desperately, since it says it's only the acknowledgement of God. That would be like a judge hearing a case, and then you know how they turn to give the jury instructions? Have you ever sat on a jury? And then sometimes they'll review the case. It could be somebody saying, now you've heard the prosecution, you've heard the defense. You have to remember that God says X, Y, and Z. Now you have your typical jurors sitting there listening to the judge telling them, you're supposed to think this way because this is what God says. The message is going to be very clear. Go with probably for the prosecution, the way these people go, but go with the people God says you need to vote for. I mean, we're going to completely undermine the entire jury system if you have things like that. And when it says here whether they're in a official or a personal capacity, now that's just scaremongering, because in a personal capacity they're already covered. They're just putting that in there for the emotional impact, and it's absolutely obscene.
Right. And this is not a limited situation, right? We have another act that has been passed called the Marriage Protection Act, which has a very similar sort of wording in it, very similar appeal or tact. And this act was actually adopted by the House 233 to 194. So a lot of people think this is a good idea. So I'm actually very frightened by this, that 233 House members thought that it was okay to for whatever reason, to undermine the checks and balances of the United States government. I'm very concerned by that.
Not to mention the basic human rights.
And the way this particular one is worded, it's basically preventing the Supreme Court from legalizing same-sex marriage because they want it to be in the to be a federalism issue, to be in the under the jurisdiction of the states. And certainly you can make arguments either way. I think that the Marriage Protection Act is a lot. Well, first off, it's a result of them not passing this constitutional amendment. I think they finally realized this amending the Constitution to prohibit same-sex marriage is dead in the water. They weren't able to do that, and so what they want to do instead of amending the Constitution and going with the system and trying to modify it as the system was set up to do, it's a dynamic thing that can be changed over time, and that's one of its beautiful features. They're going and undermining the Constitution by trying to create laws that prevent the judiciary from
The new keyword is going to be legislative activism.
Legislative activism, right.
Yeah, and don't forget, they're also just trying to undermine the entire full faith and credit clause that's also spelled out in the Constitution. It says the contract between a citizen and the state is good between that citizen and all the states. In fact, they've explicitly said right here that that's going to be thrown out. Right.
And that's an important one, that if, especially with marriage, if one state makes a law, then the other states or marries, recognizes this union, the other states sort of have to recognize it too. And they are very concerned about a particular state recognizing same-sex marriage, and another state would have to honor that, and they would like to get rid of that. And
they want to turn back the clock to 1969 when it was still illegal in Mississippi for blacks and whites to marry. It's the exact same situation, and they're trying to deny it.
Yeah, I think that's actually still on the books there, isn't it?
No, the miscegenation was taken off in '69. It was like Mississippi was the last holdout.
Okay.
So it's been 35 years since they've been in the 20th century, and here it is the 21st already.
Yeah, boy.
You're so behind.
This gay marriage thing is interesting, I think, because they really spend a lot of time worrying about homosexuals. Christians do, and I think for this, part of it is that it's very easy to sort of stir up hatred of homosexuals. So it's very easy to sort of whip people up and get them excited about a particular thing. And so, my personal feeling is that if homosexuality becomes sort of normalized and an accepted part of our culture, then they lose an enemy. okay, they lose an enemy, and that makes them much less powerful, and that's what's so very frightening for these people. So
of course, they'll always have atheists.
yeah. I should point out that that there's a lot of religious people behind these things. Pat Robertson is definitely been spearheading this whole judicial tyranny thing, and he's written a book on the subject and so on.
Well, don't forget Louisiana. Just yesterday, they've passed a ban on gay marriage. The only enclave of votes that's expected to support or to be against the ban was New Orleans, and of course they're still evacuated from the hurricane.
So they held this vote during the hurricane.
Basically, yes, before the few million people who would have voted against it could get back home to vote. And the articles that I read also said that something like 58% of all precincts in New Orleans didn't even have voting machines anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's going to be a hot topic, I think, for quite a long time. I think in the next few years we'll definitely see a showdown on this legislative tyranny issue or this judicial tyranny issue. And or judicial activism and
use your favorite
stuff.
euphemism.
They love to misname stuff, right? It's not. It's
what they live for.
Yeah, like what was the name of this?
The Center for Science and Culture.
No.
The Constitution Restoration Act.
Yeah, so that's if it's the whole title's a lie, right? It's not restoring anything, right? They're you know, I'm surprised all their stuff doesn't have mom and apple pie as part of the name, you know. It's clearly, you know, a manipulation. There's a number of folks kind of monitoring a group that might be labeled dominionists, who are Christians with this belief that that it's their duty to sort of bring God to the masses and co-opt governments to do that, both the United States and other governments in the world, and it's sort of a mandate for these folks to do that, and there's also another sort of creepy aspect of it, and they tend to be sort of Calvinists who believe in this idea of predestination, where the idea is that once you're saved, you're always saved. So no matter what you do, you know, what evil you do, it doesn't matter, right? You're still going to go to heaven. And so there's basically a group of people that sort of believe that, in a sense, it's their duty to do evil in order to continue this movement. And again, these folks are called dominionists, and there's a website that's pretty good as far as exposing what they're doing, and this is the Eureka report done by Catherine Eureka, and I'm not going to go into that too much further. Did you have more to say on this judicial issue?
Just a question about the Dominionists. I'd never heard that bit about them being related to the Calvinists. Are they aware that only 144,000 virgin men get to go to heaven? Are these Dominionists married?
Well,
do they not read their Bible?
Yeah. Well, it's the great big book of multiple choice, right? So these folks are very active. Judge Roy Moore was part of that with his Ten Commandments push. Anyway.
And one of his lawyers helped to draft the Constitution Restoration as well. Right.
So getting back to this co-opting theme, well, certainly if you can co-opt the U.S. government, you can do a lot of things. The U.S. is a very powerful nation. We have a lot of very powerful military, huge cultural influence throughout the world. So if you can control the U.S. government, you've done quite an amazing thing. You can influence the education of lots of children and so on. So anyway. We also are seeing a lot of sort of shady mechanisms being used. We have, these misnamed things, and we have these lies that the judiciary is being activists and so on. So my point is why if it's a good thing, why do you have to use lies to advance your agenda? So on the third thing I'd like to point out is, or third area I'd like to talk about in co-opting is science, and the religion has had a very sort of cantankerous relationship with science over the years, and pretty much every scientific claim that religion has made has been found to be false, which should tell you something. And one thing comes to mind is this whole episode with Galileo, coming up with this evidence that the Earth was not the center of the universe, and the Catholic Church, putting their thumb down on him to. Anyway, so over the years, I think religion has sort of been beaten back by science, and religion, especially Christianity and such, has sort of ceded a lot of territory. And for example, the Catholic Church thinks that evolution is just fine, that it's a perfectly reasonable theory, and they're not against it. Although a lot of other religious organizations are against it. And
an amusing thing about the Catholic Church is they actually contributed to the theory of relativity. Are you familiar with the history of
Oh no, I'd love to hear this.
Yes, and unfortunately, I do forget the priest's name, but when the theory was first published, there was a cosmological constant that Einstein had a part of it. There was a Roman, I believe he was actually Italian, but there was a priest who was stationed in Rome. But what it is he was absolutely convinced this constant was incorrect. He actually met with Einstein out here in San Francisco, I believe it was. He talked to him, showed him some math, his own calculations, and Einstein did admit that yes, he was uncomfortable with the constant and he felt it could be dropped. What that did is what I believe led to the concept of the singularity of the Big Bang, which the Catholic Church then claimed as God. No, it's not the Hubble constant, it's the cosmological constant.
Yes, that's right.
It's the so this Big Bang was suddenly the God, and the Catholic Church could then be comfortable with the concept of relativity. I mean, it was perfect for them. You want to talk about co-opting it. They just named the entire theory God almost.
Right. Yeah, you see that a lot in all the sort of the fringes of science. They're still looking for God there. And that gets into the sort of God of the gaps argument that we don't know why the lightning strikes the earth, so it must be God, right? Or we don't know X, so it must be God. And it turns out this will come up again in a little bit. So my point here with science is gosh, if you had some scientific studies or some scientific proof that religion was correct, then boy, wouldn't that be a feather in their cap, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. But it turns out there have been some articles written and published in peer-reviewed scientific journals that do make these claims. So this is very interesting, right? Because the intelligent design folks have been beaten up tremendously, and rightly so, because they don't have any peer-reviewed scientific publications, and here they are trying to put their stuff in textbooks.
They're actually they're able to argue that now. They somehow managed to get in an article under the radar. Well, actually, they claim it was legitimate in a peer-reviewed article. I want to say it's on trends in environment and ecology, but that might be incorrect.
Okay.
But they did actually manage to get one in, and the readership of this particular article immediately, of course, rose up and asked why the heck did this get past the editorial board, which they are now using as proof of censorship of their ideas. But they are in a peer-reviewed article, finally.
Right. There are two articles that I'd like to talk about that were recently published. I'm not familiar with that one. One is on can prayer influence the success of in vitro fertilization, embryo transfer. And this was a study done by faculty members at the Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons, who claimed to have demonstrated that distant intercessory prayer can double the success rate of in vitro fertilization. And this was published in the Journal of Reproductive Medicine, which is actually not a slouchy journal. First off, if this were true, this would be a huge claim, and I'd like to maybe point out that if you ever can produce evidence in a controlled scientific setting of psychic or paranormal capabilities, which this certainly qualifies, there's this James Randi Foundation that has a $1 million or perhaps $2 million award for you to do this, and so far there's been a lot of people trying to do this, but haven't been successful. Anyway, getting back to the study, it turns out You can find a lot of holes in the study. So let me just point out a couple of the problems with it, and if you want to go online, you can look for more problems. What they did is they had various prayer groups praying for various people who were undergoing intravenous
In vitro.
in vitro, thank you, fertilization in Korea, it turns out, which is not necessarily relevant. But they've divided these prayer groups into different people. One group was there were control groups, of course, in the usual scientific deal. But there were one group praying to increase the pregnancy rate, which is what you would expect in a study like this. There was another group trying to pray to increase the efficacy of prayer intervention. So they were praying to make the first group's prayer more powerful. Okay, so that was the second group. The third group was praying that the intent, that God's will or desire would be fulfilled in the life of the patient. Okay, so they have this very complicated study, and they divided people up into categories. At least several of these categories are unmeasurable. How do you know whether or not God's will was satisfied or not? We have no metric of that.
Out of curiosity, were the people being prayed for aware that they were being prayed for?
No, they weren't. They weren't. As it turns out, so that was controlled. So it turns out you can play various statistical games. If you divide the groups up into more and more pieces, you can actually find statistically significant things, because there might be three that happen in one group and zero in another group, and so on. So you have to be very careful about that. The authors made no attempt to discover how much prayer was being conducted outside of the study protocol. So in effect, they didn't control the amount of prayer that was going for one group or the other group, because they didn't try to inhibit prayer for certain groups. They just didn't pray for them.
And this was all Christian prayer? This
is all Christian prayer. Yeah, the prayers were here in the United States. But there are much deeper problems. One of the authors actually was pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit mail and bank fraud, and agreed to forfeit assets of more than $1 million acquired through his schemes. So one of the authors on this paper was a con artist, right? So if he's willing to disobey the law, certainly he's willing to lie a little on a paper. Another one of the authors claims to have not been involved with the study until after its completion, and to have provided only editorial assistance. So this is a very shady thing, and this sort of got past the censors, I think, or got past the scientific review process. The scientific review process is this notion of peer review, where a paper submitted for publication is sent out to various peers or people who have the ability to criticize it, and they send back their comments and such, and this helps the editorial board decide whether or not to publish a paper. Mm-hmm. This is a human process, and it fails sometimes. But science itself is self-correcting. What will happen is there'll be a publication later that will basically blow holes in this thing, and nobody will cite it anymore because it's basically flawed, or it will be unable to be replicated.
That's the most likely.
That's the most important thing, is that this won't be able to be replicated. Of course, Christians will gladly take this as proof of Christianity, and one website said, obviously, science has demonstrated in the study that the efficacy of Christian prayer in medical studies. There is no scientific or non-spiritual explanation for the cause of the medical effects demonstrated in this study. So, certainly we get a lot of mileage out of these things in the print, in the Christians who don't appreciate the subtleties of these things. Let me talk about one other paper in a little bit, but we are a live call-in show. This is September 19th. We welcome your calls, and we'll be taking them in a little bit. We have a couple callers on hold already. We'll get to you soon. We have another publication, and this is in the Proceedings of the Biological Society of Washington. So this is actually a well-known, or not a respected publication, but kind of an obscure one. It's not a very big one. And this is a paper from the ID folks, the intelligent design folks, and the paper is called, let's see, The Origin of Biological Information in the Higher Taxonomic Categories. So this is a paper, and the gist of it is that is this God of the gaps argument again, that they feel that there are various holes in various explanations in evolution, and therefore there must be a God. That's kind of the gist of the paper. They don't ever promote how God is acting, what this God is doing, this Creator is doing. So there's no positive assertions being made in the paper. And this is apparently a very big paper with a wide-ranging scope. It includes things like computer science and information theory, which comes out of electrical engineering, was born out of electrical engineering, all sorts of things. And this one got snuck past the review process as well. So far, we haven't seen too much touting of this whole thing, and there's already been a written rebuttal of the paper. So again, science will correct itself, but I'm sure that people will get a lot of mileage out of these studies and claim that they provide absolute proof that God exists and that prayer works and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Again, getting back to this co-opting theme, if you can co-opt science to make it have, satisfy your hidden agenda, then that's going to help you a lot, because people trust science quite a bit, and they trust that it's going to give us the right answer.
That's why it's so important for the ID people to keep stressing the scientific theory of intelligent design. They will very often preface it always with the scientific theory, when there's absolutely nothing scientific about it, nor, except in layman's term, is it even a theory. It's just a hypothesis. And yet they conveniently ignore that when they're trying to blast science and talk about how great their personal version of science is.
Right.
These people are as dishonest as the day is long. One of the God days even, when, back when they were 1,000,000 years long while God was creating everything.
Okay. Well, that's it for my little presentation. I guess we're going to switch to callers now. The number's on your screen. We are a live call-in show, September 19th. Please give us a call. I'm going to take our first caller, who is Ray. Hello?
Hello, yes. I would just like to say, so far I've been appreciating the show, and I can appreciate the work that y'all put forth in studying different examples here. But the only question I have is, what is the divide between creation and evolution? Like, where is the divide? I mean, you have to have something there to evolve, so there has to be a start. Whether if it was from the Big Bang Theory, or if there was some higher power that floated around and just decided to just drop off something. I mean, it's only certain that something is going to evolve to its surroundings throughout so many years. So I just can't never get a clear statement on that. I mean, seems like y'all probably have the answer.
I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
I follow it.
Okay.
Actually, there's no relation. Evolution deals with life after it's already come into existence. It does not in any way, shape, or form concern itself with the initial appearance of the first life form. Evolution doesn't even begin until life is here. Creationism, however, pretends to explain how that life gets here. And yet they try to conflate it with evolution, because so many people don't understand evolution, as your question seems to suggest. You're not quite clear on it either. So it's very easy to try to discredit it by saying it has to be creationism. Now, there's a lot of scientific ideas on where the original life came from. Panspermia is one of the more recent ones, where there may have been proteins formed in outer space. They've actually located in clouds, in nebulae, sugar molecules, believe it or not. And those can go ahead and get caught on passing asteroids, passing chunks of rock, eventually become meteorites, plunge into a world. They've just brought life, or at least they've brought the building blocks for life. But evolution doesn't address that. It doesn't care.
Yeah. So what is prior to that is the creation of the initial creation of life, or the initial creation of molecules that could support life, and that's called abiogenesis, or the creation of life from nothing.
Right, and that's another one that goes along with panspermia, abiogenesis.
Right. And so all you really need at that point is a molecule who can somehow aid in the replication of itself, somehow influences the creation of more molecules like it. and there's been quite a bit of work done on that, and that's pretty solid too. But nobody seems to pay much attention to that.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I believe exactly what you're talking about how it only takes like one molecule to land on anywhere and begin to try to adapt to surroundings. But it was scary that maybe a couple of months ago or maybe a month ago, it was a Mars probe or something had fell back to the Earth.
No, sir.
I saw it, and
That
it
was
was
not
like,
a Mars
all right.
probe.
Yeah, but I mean, if there were like molecules on that, like would they somehow evolve? I mean,
yeah, potentially over billions of years. So,
yeah, I was just like pondering that. In my
right now we have on the Earth just a vast richness of various chemicals and things. So I would be very surprised if we got anything new from outer space. Now, if we had life evolve on some other planet or some other place in its own direction, then that could potentially be contaminating.
Yeah.
But we should stress that the probe which fell to the Earth was the Genesis probe, and it had nothing to do with Mars. That was out to collect the solar wind. All it had was photons, basically, electrons. It did not have any proteins or organic molecules on it, except for what may have glommed onto it in normal space travel, which means they're already on Earth anyway, because we're constantly being bombarded by dust.
Yeah.
So there was never any concern about that.
And they do take precautions about that when they brought back rocks from the moon and such. They've taken some big precautions of keeping things separate. Anything else?
You pretty much summed up everything.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for calling.
Have a good day.
Okay, we're going to switch next to, let's see, Henry, I believe. Hello, Henry.
How y'all doing?
Hi.
I watch your show all the time. I like your show. You were talking about something that's one of my subjects that I've studied for over 20 years. I'd like to try and correct something. You claim that we have 3 branches of government in our country right now. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
I'll go through a short kind of take it from where I know it started to up to now. And if you'd like to talk to me off the air sometime, I'd be happy to provide all the documents for you.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that you can clarify your points in just a few sentences.
I certainly will.
Okay.
In 1860, our government, Congress, the Senate, recessed sine die. They never properly, according to our Constitution, reconvened. You can check that out for yourself. In
Does that mean that the U.S. government fell apart at that point? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just telling you what happened.
So maybe you could back up and tell me what instead of the 3 branches that I claimed we have, what would you claim that we do have?
Well, if you'll let me take you through a timeline, it won't take long. In other words, do you agree that our Congress and Senate, according to our Constitution, have to reconvene according to how it tells them to do it?
I think those are sort of guidelines. I don't think that if somebody had a procedural error that the U.S. government falls apart all of a sudden.
Well, you would be incorrect. In 1860, they recessed sine die. You might want to look that up, what that means.
It means without a day being set for the reconvention.
Right. They never came back legally. In 1862, Lincoln passed the Territorial War Act. He divided the United States into districts. This is why we today have district courts. Mm-hmm. In 1863, April 23rd, Lincoln declared martial law. That is known as Lincoln's General Order 100, or the Lieber Code. That was codified into the Reconstruction Acts. Those have never been repealed. And if you do not believe that, call your senator and ask them to show you proof from the Congressional Research Service, because you can't do it. Only a senator can get that information for you. They will write you back. I have a letter from the Congressional Research Service which says, we show no evidence that the Reconstruction Acts have ever been repealed. They have never been repealed. Okay, 1871. I want to ask you 2 questions first. What country do you live in?
The United States of America.
Correct. What country is ruling you right now?
As far as I know, it's the same one.
No, No, it's called the United States. Spelled with capital U,
Okay.
small case. That, sir, according to the Supreme Court, and I will be happy to show you that Supreme Court decision, the term United States is a corporation. In 1871, they passed the Civil Service Act.
Okay, I'm failing to see where all this is going. So
you're not.
Can you kind of wrap it up?
Okay. At that point, all officials became public employees of the United States, which is a corporation. They all sign to this day Standard Form 61, which makes them an employee.
Well, that seems to make sense to me if you're going to
so they
pay
are
somebody.
not judicial officers. And to prove that to you that we do not, if you want to go a little further, March 9th, 1933, Roosevelt declared emergency war powers.
Okay, I'm still having trouble relating this to your claim about the three branches of the government.
And sir, can we ask, how does this pertain exactly to atheism?
Well, you were saying, talking about that we had a judicial tyranny in this stuff. I'm telling you, we do not even have judges. They are civil servants. They are acting outside the Constitution under the color of law. And I will prove it to you by my next statement. If the President of the United States tomorrow issues an executive order, does that apply to you?
I assume so.
Then how can you have three branches of government, sir?
Because he's one of the branches. The executive branch is...
The judicial makes law, not the President.
Well, yes.
And that's what I'm trying to tell you. You have been under a provisional military government since 1860. And the reason I know this, sir, is because I have two judges in my family, okay?
Yeah, well, I have no surprises that there's a lot of sort of messes that were created along the way.
And this is why judges can do whatever they want in a courtroom. Because if you go back to take Texas, if you go back to our original Texas Organic Constitution, you might not even be aware that we have one. If you call your representative today and get a copy of what you think is the Texas Constitution, if you look on the front of it, it says, the Constitution of the State of Texas. That is a corporate entity, and it is always referred to in any legal legislative action here in this state under the term this state. If you go to the Texas Penal Code under Section 1-04, territorial jurisdiction, let me read you what it says. It says, underlined in black letters, this state includes the land and the water and the airspace above the land and water over which this state has the power to define offenses.
We very much appreciate your call, and we're going to move on to some other calls. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have a lesson in our Constitution, apparently.
I can't consider that much of a lesson without looking up to it. Something can be superseded without being repealed.
That's
I
right.
don't know if there have been any laws that have replaced that.
Right. We certainly have in the Texas Constitution, we have a law that says that people admitted to office within Texas have to believe in God, right? And
which I believe has actually been superseded by another amendment. There's been this is just me working from memory, I believe there has been a constitutional quorum and the amendments passed, but they haven't had the constitutional quorum just because it's such a legislative headache. So it's not officially in there. But again, I have already disclaimed not being a legal scholar.
Yep. Okay.
But people who categorically say X, Y, Z without citing any cases, without stressing supersession versus repealing, I just don't think it's worth listening to them.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the next caller, who is Robbie.
Yes, I'm right here, buddy. How you doing?
Fine, how are you?
Pretty good. I just know I have some kind of question. It's a personal question. Do you know anything about laws of something to do with a loved one, like early 20s, loves early teen years?
These are called age of consent laws.
Yeah. Do you know about that?
No, I'm not an expert on that. No.
Oh, okay. Well, because I was trying to be in love with somebody like in the early teens.
Does this have a question, anything to do with atheism?
No.
Okay.
This is
I suggest you find maybe a call-in
somebody.
show dealing with sexual issues.
Something to do with love, relationship thing.
Yeah, so we're not that. So
Okay, sorry.
Take care. Okay. We had some interesting calls today. Okay, we're going to take Stephen. Hello?
Oh, yeah, this is Steven. I have a question to ask you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been a Christian for, let's say, about maybe 10 years, and I'm like 25 years old. And I would just like to ask, like, how does it make you feel when they approach you with ignorance? Because I have a problem in my church where no one agrees with me that, if someone has the right to believe, what they want, and if they want to, think about certain things, then that's their right. But they want to sit here and, get angry and, say all kinds of bad things. I'm like, wow, you just got out of church, and why are you going to say that? And it kind of makes me feel ashamed of what I believe in. But I know that, like, things have been twisted so much nowadays, like how you're talking about people trying to make profit off of, let's say, mixing evolution and creation together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very evident to me, and I would just like to personally apologize for those out there who are ignorant and approaching y'all, because, I'm dealing with it myself,
Well, I hope you'll take the opportunity to challenge beliefs that are not supported by evidence.
Exactly. Because the only things I believe in are, like, things that I've experienced firsthand. And when I try to talk about the things that made me decide what to believe in, people get scared. And it's like, how are you going to be scared of what you're worshiping? And it's like, they live in a, I don't know how to say it. It's like they're living in a whole different...
A fantasy world?
Exactly. A fantasy world.
We get that impression sometimes too.
Yeah, so I'm just letting you know that you're not a stranger. You're not the only one. I'm feeling the same way too. And
okay. Well,
yeah.
maybe you can help us bring sense to the world.
Exactly. Well, I'm trying. Like I get up and like I say, I just give parts of like my life, things that I've gone through, things that I've experienced firsthand, and I don't know. I'm still, I still have, trying to tell those people to calm down. Why don't you stop shouting and just listen a little bit? And if everybody will listen, then it might be, a better world to live in. Everyone can coexist and just be happy,
Sounds good. All right, anything else?
Guys.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay.
That was refreshing.
Did you have any comments on that?
Just it was very refreshing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to emphasize that we're a live call-in show, September 19th. Our phones are open. We welcome your calls. You can talk about our subject of co-opting, religion co-opting various things like holidays. We didn't even touch on that. That's another good one. Or if you have questions about atheism in general,
and we're not a lovelorn line, so we can drop those.
We're glad to take those on. So I'm going to continue on with another caller. We have Mike. Hello.
Hello, this is Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I was calling about the peer review process. I have a number of papers myself published for peer review, and it's really not that big of an accomplishment if you don't have a quota system on the number of papers to be published. So if you shop around for the right conference and you submit a paper, they'll just publish it out of hat if they haven't run out of slots for the number of papers they're going to publish.
That's right. That's right. And there's a whole pecking order of different conferences and journals and such, and some of them are easier to get papers in than others. So,
right.
Yeah.
And, you can get away with it, and, I've seen it before. There's crummy papers get published, and they're so unimportant that nobody even mentions it except to make a snide remark about it, but they don't counteract them.
Right.
Or make the counter-argument to them necessarily. So, this con artist, I've seen con artists do this before where they're trying to sell something. They're not serious scientists.
I'm sure medicine is rife with it, where you might have various groups that have various products and they're trying to get scientific papers to back up their products, that sort of thing, right? So there's this hidden agenda problem. Right.
Yeah.
So-
So I mean, that was this con artist game, and well, I guess y'all refuted it pretty succinctly. You found his criminal record.
It does cast doubt. So I mean, I don't want to claim that a criminal can't do good science, but it does cast some doubts on whether or not they're telling the truth in this case, right?
Well, I think it's safe to say a proven fraud is not likely to do proper science.
Yeah. You have to be very cautious in that situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that is my only comment to reinforce that point.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm a scientist as well. I've written papers and done peer reviews on various papers, and sometimes the peer reviewers are lazy and they just say, well, it's the right number of pages. It looks meaty enough. We'll give it a go, and we won't actually criticize it. And I personally try not to do that, but there's always time constraints.
It happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for your call.
Have a good one.
All right. Take care. So, did you have any comments on that?
No, I'm just shocked at how casual the peer review process can be.
Well, yeah, and it's
Never done that.
the things slip through, and anyway, you very often people who are submitting papers don't have a hidden agenda. They are doing some science. They are trying to produce a good result. So there's a lot of sort of self-censorship, but things do slip through the cracks. Certain disciplines have various problems with them, or inherent problems, like in computer science, which is my discipline. You very often see papers where people are inventing a technology that doesn't necessarily solve a problem that's important, or so you have sort of a technology in search of a problem, and that's a very common sort of systematic problem in computer science. I'm sure in medicine there are other systematic problems as well. Anyway, I'm going to go on. Let's see. I think next we have Stephen. Is it? Stephen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's totally okay to kill your mother and rape your daughter.
Must be a Christian.
Must be a Christian. That's all I can say. Okay, we are out of callers for this moment. Please call in if you have some questions for us or have some discussion relative to our topic today, which is religion co-opting various institutions. Do you have anything you'd like to chat about? Any latest news or?
Well, for this particular topic, I think the Discovery Institute has to take a top slot on trying to co-opt science. It is absolutely dreadful. These are the people who have popularized the concept of intelligent design as though it were actually a scientific theory. In fact, every time they refer to it, it's always the scientific theory of intelligent design. They try to completely disown being creationists. In fact, I've got their cute little fact from their website, which I don't see the need to advertise here. And one of the questions is, are you creationist? And they say, oh, absolutely not. In fact, it's very insulting when people call us creationists. Creationists think that the God of the Bible, actually they say the Bible God, capitalizing God, showing they do think that this is the one and only God, somehow created the earth. And we're saying that somehow something created everything. Now that right there proves it's not scientific. You don't get to say, well, I think this is how it is. You have to postulate, this is what happened, and we have proof that this is what it is. You can't just say, an intelligence created the world. You have to say, we have studied and found out these little purple frogs from Rigellus 4 created the world because they left their DNA behind in a tube worm. Something along those lines.
Right. You have to make a positive claim and back it up with evidence.
What they have is a hypothesis. And yet they are trying to, on the basis of using the layman's version of theory, they are trying to say this is actual science and therefore it needs to be in the schools, which is just bunk back and forth. It doesn't matter what proof they have.
It's missing a whole lot of steps, right? You have to have a theory be confirmed by multiple studies and such in science. It has to basically be accepted by the scientific community, and then it's a candidate for maybe putting in the textbooks. But even then, it may be too obscure or too high a level or whatever. I mean,
well, even at that point, if it were in the textbook, it should be a footnote. If it hasn't been any reproducible results, if it doesn't have any predictions that it's made, if it doesn't have anything other than just a vague hypothesis, it is just not science. It is pure faith, and of course, that's what these people specialize in. That's their thing.
Yeah.
They think just because they want it badly enough, that by nature makes it true.
Mm-hmm. And they definitely have an agenda of advancing that. I mean, and we have this document
the
from
infamous wedge strategy, which outlines their 5-year step to actually taking over American schools and making us the stupidest people on the face of the earth. It is unbelievable. We are in I think we're already in year 5 right now. No, 2003 was year 5. So they've just finished their initial 5-year plan, working on the same basis as the communists with their 9-year plans, I suppose.
Yeah, but their plan is all about getting the ideas into popular culture, and science is sort of an afterthought. And
oh yes, to read it, they don't say we're going to have 100 reproducible experiments out in the public domain by the year 2003. They say we're going to have 100 articles published. The content of the articles, the reliability of the articles, whether or not it's even any more scientific than what a 5-year-old could do, doesn't matter. They want the idea in the public consciousness. What is it? The memes.
Right.
Isn't that the word?
That's
They want
right.
the meme out there.
That's right. Propagate that out. Okay. So I guess we'll go back to callers. We have a few new callers. James, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi there. Hi. I just called and I got the person on the line. I talked to him like some of my problem, and so he loved me. He's putting me on to talk to you. And well, see, my whole issue is that I was raised by my grandparents. Like my parents died at a young age in a car wreck. They were Catholic and they weren't very firm believers in it. But my grandparents, however, were they were young Earth creationists and Southern Baptists, and they had all sorts of beliefs and everything. And that they kind of instilled in me from a young age. You see, and one of them, well, according to young Earth creationism, of course, the Earth is 6,000 years old. And
right, we've
they had
heard
this
that.
belief that dinosaurs exist behind an invisible glass dome, currently with us. We coexist with these dinosaurs, and they live with us. And I don't know what to think of this. You see, I have evidence contrary to it, but I don't have any evidence supporting it either. So I'm kind of baffled and confused. You see?
I'm sorry, you don't have evidence against giant domes housing 30-foot tall lizards floating around? Just as
possible.
Satellite views from Earth kind of disprove that alone.
Well, I don't know if I believe in satellites either, NASA's a great institution. I've been to the whole U.S., the Houston NASA institution place and everything. I've seen all the little demo rockets and everything. There's little fake space shuttles you can walk around in, but I don't believe in all that mumbo jumbo.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, what mumbo jumbo?
The whole rocket ships being able to leave the Earth,
he doesn't believe
my
aliens have left the
grandparents
Earth.
taught me that.
Oh, we've never been to the moon, correct?
Well, I don't believe it. No. Have you seen that Fox footage where they actually prove that the whole moon landing was fake?
No, I've seen the Fox footage, which they suggest might say that there's a fake, but then I've also seen things like badastronomy.com and just countless sites that debunk these debunkers. They can demonstrate categorically that every piece of evidence against the moon landings being true is a lie. In fact, if you want to check out badastronomy.com, Phil Plait, who is a former NASA scientist, I believe, and is currently I think he's in the private sector now, he specializes in this. It's a very excellent site to visit.
All right, well, that's nice and all, but it doesn't address the whole issue of the dinosaurs,
Sure, ask them what their proof is that it's there, and then you can deal with their proof when they've given you something positive.
But what proof is there that there aren't dinosaurs behind a dome, an invisible dome, and we just can't see them?
Oh no, that's getting absurd. An invisible dome?
Yeah, well, I have an invisible pink unicorn in my garage that I keep as a pet.
And Carl Sagan had an invisible fire-breathing dragon.
Yeah, so
there is just as much proof for each of those as there is for invisible domes. How do they presume the domes became invisible?
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't get this up. Thanks for the fun. Bye.
Okay.
This is when we got to the invisible bit.
Poke fun at the atheist. That's a good sport these days.
Well, the bad thing is, if you've ever read the news group Alt Atheism, you know there are people who are stupid enough to actually believe that. Up until the invisible dome bit, that is.
Right. So there's some. I don't know. He definitely picked on some themes that I think are popular with the young Earth creationists and all that. So. Okay, we have Matt on the line. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, hi.
Hi. Actually, I'm a regular viewer. I'm a Christian, but I am a regular viewer almost every week.
Okay.
And the one thing I wanted to call in today about, I'm not sure if you guys are talking about science or religion in the schools or not, something along those lines maybe. But
it comes up a lot, to be sure.
Okay, well, what I wanted to say was, ever since I've gone to school, starting in junior high, all I've ever gotten is evolution. So, for some of the pushes to have other other viewpoints in schools, I really don't see the problem with it. Secondly,
Let me address that before we move on to the next topic.
Okay.
Science is not a popularity contest. It's about determining what evidence we have for various things, and there's such a preponderance of evidence for evolution that it doesn't make sense, and there's no evidence effectively for the other viewpoint. So it's basically a non-starter. So why give it any credence at all?
There's a lot of people that think differently out there. Actually, I mean, there's a lot of books. I mean, I used to be an atheist, and there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of people that can tie in both, and it may not be the stereotypical like Christian viewpoint. But, you know, if you're a scientist, I do research at UT for grad school, and, you know, it's always a scientific method, and it's very tedious, as you know, and it's very, you never really can really prove anything in research. But at the same time, there's not any place in science where something can come out of nothing. And the Big Bang Theory is essentially that. It's just everything came out of nothing. So really, I understand you guys' viewpoints on maybe what happened the first billionth of a second of creation. But before that, you know, you guys don't have any more of a clue than anybody else does.
That's right.
So we all need to really
it's currently a big unknown right now, and there's a number of theories about it, but we have to test those theories.
Right, but don't you think, though, regardless, I mean, you know, whoever that guy was before that called, I don't know, the whole, there's different, even within the Christian faith, there are different viewpoints about how long the world's been around. That's not just one viewpoint about 6,000 years. I want to make that clear, too. But even before that, you know, the point is that there's just certain answers that we will never, ever be able to prove. I don't care if it's even a million years from now. It's impossible. Science will never be able to prove.
That's probably true, that we will never know everything. That's right.
And, you know, I just think that we all need to kind of have more of an open mind about it. As far as faith goes, you know, proving faith, that's what faith doesn't have to be proven. And I'm not trying to sway anybody at all, because I used to not believe in anything, but there are certain things that happen when you have faith that science can't get a grip on, and no one else can prove wrong either. And the last comment I wanted to make is I'm in the psychology department at UT, and there's a lot of things about just cognition and perception that just aren't known. And the last example I'll leave you with is just the simple fact of behavior. How behavior is derived from cortical activity is absolutely not known. It is not known, and when you start getting into perceptive fields and studying things like that, there's a lot of not knowns out there. There's a lot more out there that science hasn't answered versus than what it has. And that's really just the last comment I want to make.
That's right. Yes, and a general theme, I think, is the more we learn that we don't know. Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean there won't be answers to various questions, specific questions down the road.
Sure.
And yes, you're right. There may be some things that we'll never know. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to plug that hole with a God. You know, this God of the gaps argument. That doesn't necessarily mean, you know. I would think that if you have an all-powerful entity, that we would have some sort of measuring, some sort of way of discovering that, right? There should be some positive evidence for something that has infinite power, right?
When we say that there's certain things that we'll never be able to quite grasp, but yet we know we exist, I think that right there, personally, is a revelation of something, of a creation. That there's something we will never be able to grasp.
No, it could just be that the universe is too damn big for us to explore. I don't necessarily buy that.
The concept alone is, like you said, we got to go on what we know. Well, we know we exist here. We know we're here. We know the universe is huge. But even if it was as big as, you know, just the Earth and the Moon, we still wouldn't really be able to find out how it came into existence. There's just no way. It's never going to happen. And so
you can't really say it'll never happen, though.
The point is that if you're atheist, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, it doesn't matter what you are. Everyone has their own viewpoint, and either we're all wrong or there's only one right. That's the whole thing, and we just need to be a little bit more accepting of each other instead of cracking jokes and putting each other down, because none of us really know the answers. That's just the point.
Well, you know, if somebody makes a claim that's false, we're going to do that. We reserve the right to
I understand that.
To beat down bad ideas, right, or known obviously bad things.
Mm-hmm.
But we still all just have our own viewpoint. Like, you guys have the viewpoint, and I used to share it that there was nothing else out there, and there's just certain things that have happened in my life personally that science will never be able to touch or explain. It's impossible. It's beyond us, and there are things that I believe that happen beyond us. And to go back to what I was saying originally, you know, even if you want to argue, and even if I would say, okay, I give you, from the first billionth of a second of the Earth, science can really say a lot, almost more than anything about how we've come to where we are at this present time. But you go 1 second behind that, it will never be able to tap into that. It's impossible. But there had to have been something.
The frontiers of science are always changing. I disagree. There may be there may be questions after we figure that out, but I don't think that's outside. I don't think we have any reason to believe that that's outside of our eventual understanding.
So you think, say, theoretically, a couple thousand years, maybe even a million years from now, science will be able to say, okay, here's how we came into existence. Here's exactly what happened from the beginning of whatever time is.
I believe that's possible, anyway. but again, that's faith, if you will, that I have. But I don't have any evidence that says we cannot know these things at this point.
Well, then a second ago, maybe I'm getting off on a different track, but a second ago we were in agreement about the unknown. There's always going to be an unknown. There
will always be some unknowns, but that particular unknown, I think that we'll eventually figure that out. We are making great progress on theories of how matter and energy and all the various the fields and such work out. I'm not saying it very articulately, but we're very close to having a grand theory of everything, is what it's known as. And we can potentially conduct experiments to verify that that's true, just like we conducted experiments to show that Einstein's relativity was true.
So okay, I'm going to let you guys go next to the other callers. The last question, promise. Are you guys telling me honestly, I mean, and obviously y'all know a lot of atheists because it's an atheist community. Mm-hmm. There's just things that have never happened in y'all's lives that I don't want to say spiritually because I know you don't like that word, but just beyond kind of, you just kind of stop for a second, like, whoa, what was that? That just doesn't make any sense. Especially as a scientist, anything out there that just kind of makes you question even the whole fact of being an atheist, or has just everything been black and white for you all your lives?
I think that let me try to answer that. And maybe you'll want to take a stab. I think that we do have things in our lives that don't have immediate explanations. As part of being human, we're kind of messy creatures. We have some interesting brain chemistry that sometimes gets altered. We have funny coincidences that happen, all sorts of things. I think that atheists have sort of an approach to life, or a bias, if you will, that we think that we have yet to see anything that gives us evidence of these supernatural things. So we're more inclined to think that it's just a problem with the perception, or a problem with the brain chemistry, or whatever. So I don't know if you want to take a stab at that too.
No, I agree. I also think some people have this weird, overwhelming need to feel like there's some part of a magical world, and when they're outside, they might see something of breathtaking beauty, and they can't accept the fact that it's beautiful, not for them. It doesn't care whether or not it's appreciated. It's just that way. And so they have to say, oh, well, God put that there for me to enjoy. God put that there to make the world more beautiful. I think there are a lot of things in, the DSM-4? Yes, that could be attributed, a lot of religion I think could be attributed to a lot of the items in there. These weird, egocentric need to be the center of some universe-spanning entity's attention. And I don't think that the alternate to being spiritual is to see everything in black and white. I think that is very much of the sort of view that an immature person, a child who hasn't yet become an adult, would think. The world's never black and white, not for anybody except for a psychopath, in which case it is literally black and white. Yeah. Everybody else sees the shades of gray, sees that this thing is beautiful here, but in this other context it may actually be horrible. A rose in a wheat field is a weed.
Explained by science, that's black and white. Everything's explained by science, or it will be. That's pretty black and white. That's what I meant.
If you're talking about just science, that's not the world at large. That's not what people's perceptions in everyday life.
But when you say, hey, this is beautiful, like, hey, looking at this flower or something, you can say, hey, looking up in the sky, this is beautiful. And if when you figure, the speed of light, and you can't be much heavier than that to go the speed of light. Obviously, that's science. And in the universe is billions and billions of certain stars could be millions of light years away. That's obviously not possible to get there and study it and figure it all out. I mean, it's just not possible.
It's not possible for us now at this stage of our scientific technological development. No, it's not. And the furthest build, I believe, the farthest quasar is 15 billion light years off.
Yeah.
So, but the law of physics, so the speed of light, and you add weight to that, it's going to slow you down.
The law of physics is a man-made conception. It is not what the universe is implying. It's what we understand of the universe. For all we know, it's completely wrong, and we may eventually break the speed of light. One simply never knows where we're going to go, because we're not allowing a wall to fall in place and say, this is God, God says no further. We don't allow ourselves to be stopped by this hypothetical being saying, you're not allowed to explore any further. Here there be dragons. That's not on the scientific map.
But I will agree with the
people
caller.
even with faith don't think that with God it's a law. I think they believe, like I do with God, that there is no law, that there are no limits with God. So I don't know what you just meant by that, but
Okay. Well, maybe we'll stop this, and thank you very much for calling, Matt. Okay. Okay. We have another caller, Brian, line 3. Brian?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hi. I've kept you on the line. I guess I've been going in the wrong order, so I'm sorry if I kept you on too long.
Oh, that's okay.
What do you got for us?
Well, hey, I'm visiting Austin, and I compliment you guys on your bravery. I'm a coward. I'm an agnostic.
Okay.
I've had spiritual experiences in my life, but I don't know. I tend to go with some quotes like Mark Twain. Faith is believing in something you know ain't so, and Albert Einstein, who I believe he said that either everything's an act of God or nothing is. So people, I believe, who believe in God, it's a very personal thing. But it's because it's personal. It's difficult to challenge someone on their beliefs or whatever. So, in that vein, we're talking about co-opting, how religion has co-opted things. It seems to have co-opted our president at this point.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's a very personal thing with him. But he's apparently the type of Christian that is reborn, very faithful, very literal. And suddenly we're in a war with a country with an entire religion, really. I mean, we're after Islamist terrorists all over the world, and we're fighting in an Islamic country, 2 Islamic countries. This war has some terrible religious undertones to it.
It does. It does.
I find it to be very frightening. And I feel very helpless about it because I just wonder...
Well, religious wars are really awful things because people, based on religion, based on this passion of their belief, will do things that normal people or people who without this passion wouldn't do. And I don't think it's necessarily it's religion in particular. It's this passion and this potentially denigrating people who are not of your belief or whatever. They're not human. They don't have souls, whatever. So you can have some very heinous things that can happen as a result of that. And certainly a lot of the Muslim countries believe that we are at war with Islam. And that's a very scary thing, and I don't think people realize how dangerous the situation is with respect to that.
Well, I think you can see why they believe that in some ways. From some of the things I've been reading, we're sending missionaries over there. We're letting missionaries in.
Right.
And why we think sending Christian missionaries in to reform Muslims is going to work anyway.
Right. So let me clarify that. In the wave of the first battle in Iraq, there was a bunch of folks here in the United States that went over in a missionary capacity to bring relief supplies like blankets and such, but also to bring the Bible with them. This was all set up and ready to go, and I think that finally somebody thought that would be a bad idea and did put a kibosh on it. But the fact that this was very much in motion for a long time is disconcerting. So I don't know that actually went through, but that was certainly in the plans for quite a while.
Yeah, well, and the whole missionary idea of going to a place where folks don't believe in your religion and trying to convert them to your religion, basically by saying, we'll help you do this, we'll help you do that, all you need to do is believe the way we believe. I'm sure it's been going on for all of history, but it's a very how do you say it?
It's got strings attached to it, doesn't it?
Strings attached. It's hypocritical.
It's not really altruism.
It's even, you even see it in this country, with the homeless shelters and if you want help and you're down and out, you might have to say, yeah, I believe in something that I know ain't so. It's a sad
right, especially with this faith-based charity issue, right?
Oh, that's exactly.
To get federally mandated help on various issues, you might have to go through a faith-based organization in order to get that, and you might have to pretend you believe in whatever, or at least, at the very least, hear a message that may or may not be your belief system. So yeah, that's kind of scary too. In fact, I'd like to do a show on that at some point.
Well, I'm very much opposed to faith-based. The government should not be giving my tax money to any church or any religious organization.
Yeah, we're very much for the separation of church and state. We think that makes both better.
Well, yeah, and I believe in a secular government that takes care of its people. If certain people that are running the government are of a certain religion, that doesn't really bother me. But this particular government that we have right now doesn't really take care of the least of its children. But on the backside of it, they always promote and expound on their religious beliefs, which that for some reason never seem to pan out in the real world. I really got to compliment you guys. I think you're pretty brave, because where I come from, I get shot down all the time.
Okay.
It's hard for me to even
What city are you from?
I live in southern Missouri.
Oh, okay.
Ouch.
Okay.
And your
Move to
gal there,
Austin.
she's tough.
That might be a little easier to be an atheist here in Austin than southern.
Well, I always complain about Texas. It's too hot, it's too conservative, but I always forget how cool Austin is. So
the shining crown. We love Austin.
Well, I
definitely.
appreciate y'all guys.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your call.
You bet.
All right. Okay. Are we brave? I don't know.
Nah.
No. We haven't had any death threats or anything. Let's go on to caller Billy. Hello.
Hey, I called a minute ago. I think you guys accidentally hung up on me or something. But what I was just saying is that I was reading in the Bible the other day, and it was telling me that I should rape my mother. And
yeah? Oh, okay. Well, he's gone again. Well, the Bible does condone incest and all sorts of interesting things.
And rape is great as long as you can go ahead and buy her from her father later.
That's right. That's right. So there is some nasty stuff in the Bible. Our caller was pulling our leg, but he definitely gave us an opening here, right?
Oh yeah, it's one of the most evil books around. When people take it literally as a foundation for morality, it's a very evil book. Otherwise, it's as bad as taking the Grimms for morality. And if anybody's ever read an actual Grimm's fairy tale, you know that is not the way you want to live your life.
Okay, so we'll take another caller. Joe, hello.
Yeah. Can you guys do a show without making a single reference to a religious concept? And I ask you if...
Well, we're Atheism show, so...
Well, that's the thing. Why don't you call yourself anti-theist instead of atheist? And perhaps you could expound on that, because it seems like it's like you just said that the Bible is an evil. You just invoked a religious concept to describe the Bible.
Well, we could do it.
Why are you even talking about the Bible? I mean,
well, a lot of people live their life by that.
What does an atheist have to talk about the Bible? Seems like there's a lot of other things to talk about if you're an atheist.
Actually, sir, we started by talking about a lot of things.
Or something such as that.
We started by talking about science, legislation, and medicine. And we talked about it from the perspective of an atheist who's really unhappy that you have people injecting their own personal religion into it. We mentioned the Bible just now because we have this special ed retard who keeps calling in and pretending to get these things out of the Bible. So, of course, we had to address that. Well, we didn't have to.
Well, you guys, atheists, your show seems to be pretty motivated, sort of an anti-theism sort of motivation, rather than sort of there's something a bit impure about your atheism.
Impure?
Yes.
Could you expound on that?
Intellectual dishonesty. In other words,
we're trying to point out where theism gets the wrong answer.
Well, why?
Because the wrong answer affects us.
I mean, it's like atheism can't exist without religion on the other side of it.
Well, yes, because
like
one's
you
the
spend your
opposite
whole
of the
dang
other.
days talking about theism or something. It's just kind of bizarre.
We talk about science quite a bit and its positive benefit to mankind, and we talk about the separation of church and state as a good concept. Does that
but is separation, is the political idea of separation of church and state dependent upon the concept of atheism? Or is it you see what I'm
there are a lot of very sensible
it's a political
theists who support
idea
the
that
separation.
doesn't require atheism. I don't have to be an atheist to be an advocate of separation of church and state.
Well, that's right, but maybe we can join forces with those folks, and we've suggested that and actually done that in many cases.
I'm just struggling with what you guys are about, because is it about just dissing the Bible and fundamentalist Christians, or just religious thought in general?
Atheism is just the lack of a belief in God. It's very very simple idea, and because it's so simple, it's a very broad concept. It incorporates a lot of folks can call themselves atheists, and you can take that perspective and talk about various things like the government and how science's influence on things and various legislation that's going on. All sorts of things. So we take on various topics on our show from an atheist perspective and run with them and see where we go.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Well, thank you.
You didn't sound convinced.
Well, yeah. Well, theism is making certain claims and things that we think are wrong, and so we're criticizing them. Yes, we do spend a good bit of time, criticizing things. I think that the U.S. government, the checks and balances in the U.S. government, is a pretty damn wonderful thing, and I would very much hate to see it sabotaged. And so I'm going to speak out against those sorts of things, and that's what I'm doing. I hate to see science sabotaged by ulterior motives. I hate to see, all sorts of things.
And some people don't realize that ideas garnered from religion are so prevalent and so pervasive throughout society that it's not really something religious to begin with, like marriage. That is not a religious institution, and yet it is so embedded in people's consciousness that it is. We're actually having to fight for it as a basic human right for people. And that is not necessarily per se an atheist issue, but the fact that it is religion where it should not be makes it an atheist issue.
Right. Yeah, we don't want to have the world make decisions on our behalf based on beliefs that we think are nonsense. That sort of thing. All right, we're getting low on time, so we're going to take one more caller. Clifton?
Hey, this is Don.
Oh, hello? This is Don. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry?
I'd like to know, are you people real scientists? Or are you just...
I'm a scientist, yes, sir.
I'm in computer programming, but where is that a legitimate science that in order that you can determine where creation, started and all that kind of stuff? And the other lady, are you a scientist?
No, I haven't claimed to be.
Oh, you're just a very intelligent person. Okay, let me ask you this. Can I get an honest answer from you as to what faith is and why you think that atheism is not faith? And I'll hang up.
Sure. Do you mean faith in the religious terms? Like a faith in God type thing? Because faith in general is just...
faith as to what you believe that there isn't. Could you tell me why atheism does not qualify as a legitimate faith?
Sure.
I'm going to hang up and listen.
Because atheism is basically, by definition, the lack of a belief in God. So we are...
No, that's not. That's not.
That is exactly what it is. There's no reason to believe there's a God.
Well, all right, that's faith.
No, it's not faith.
You believe that there is no God, and you're not honest about it.
No, sir,
that's not... You have these little cute phrases.
Sir, will you finish? Would you let me finish for a moment?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it is not faith because we have not been shown evidence, and I'm not saying, oh, well, I don't want that to mean God.
And we have not shown evidence that there is no God.
Beg pardon?
It's a faith. And yet...
Well, you're not going to let us finish, so why don't you just go ahead and get what you have off your chest?
Okay, no, we're running out of time, so I'm sorry about that. If you didn't get in give us write us on TV at atheistcommunity.org. We'll try to answer your questions. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Thank you for being my co-host, and it's good to be here. Our little love rings or whatever they are.
It's always terribly annoying when the callers won't actually be quiet long enough for a person to answer.
Yeah.